The man gently picks up the anchor on the deck, then he wraps the rope around his cousin's ankle, but after all, it is his first time killing someone, so he cannot help feeling nervous inside. Beckett realizes something for the first time: ending a life turns out to be this easy. There are no cameras installed on the yacht, so everything will only be ruled as an accident. But if Beckett wants to take full control of the billion-dollar fortune, he still has to get rid of the other 6 heirs ahead of him. To understand how all of this began, the story goes back to decades ago. Beckett's mother, Mary, was a long-time resident of Huntington, Long Island, and also the rightful female heir of a top family. At that time, the family already had a fortune worth $20 billion. Mary's life could be said to have everything she ever wanted, but at a banquet one night, Mary simply turned her head for one extra glance and fell in love with the man playing cello in the band. The two even shared a passionate night together, but the good time did not last long. Mary soon found out she was pregnant. When Mary's father found out, he was extremely angry. He forced his daughter to get rid of the child as soon as possible, but blinded by love, Mary insisted on keeping the baby, so she was kicked out by her father. From Mary of Huntington, New York, she became Mary of Belleville, New Jersey. After some time passed, Mary successfully gave birth to her son, Beckett, but on the very day of the birth, Beckett's father suddenly suffered a pulmonary embolism, died at the young age of 21. After that, Mary had no choice but to raise the child alone. She found a job at the motor vehicle department, barely managing to support their lives. When Beckett grew a little older, Mary told her son something important: they may have been cast out of the family, but they were not stripped of their inheritance rights, because Mary's father had set up an irrevocable trust to avoid paying inheritance tax. This means that the massive fortune, including all kinds of movable and immovable assets, would be passed to the oldest person in the line of inheritance, but Beckett was the youngest in the family. In other words, as long as Beckett lived long enough, he would truly have a chance to inherit the fortune. Even though Mary was a widowed single mother, living at a financial disadvantage, she never gave up on raising her son well. She did everything she could to make sure Beckett had the manners, taste and elegance of the wealthy. From piano to archery, he learned everything. But at this moment, Beckett met someone, a girl who would change his life forever. Her name was Julia, a true rich girl. Beckett fell in love at first sight. On Julia's birthday party that day, Julia took the initiative to talk to Beckett. From that day on, they officially got to know each other. On the day of the piano competition, when the lights went out, Julia secretly kissed Beckett. That moment completely stirred Beckett's heart. Beckett was completely wrapped around Julia's finger. Sadly, before their story could go any further, Mary fell seriously ill and was hospitalized, but the cruel truth was her family must have known about it, yet they not only refused to help. Not even a single person came to take a look. Before she died, Mary repeatedly told Beckett to always remember one thing: you must not give up until you have the right kind of life, the kind of life I raised you to have. Young Beckett nodded in confusion after hearing this, agreeing to his mother's final wish, which was to be buried in the family cemetery in Huntington, but the family did not respond at all, so after Mary died, she was buried in a public cemetery. Beckett secretly kept a lock of his mother's golden hair as a memory. After the funeral ended, with no one to rely on, Beckett could only go to his grandfather's house, but the man did not even show up and did not open the door for Beckett, only asking the housekeeper to hand him a letter. It was filled with fake sympathy, saying they understand the current situation, but they are unable to provide help at this time. They did not want to accept Beckett as an illegitimate child. With no other choice, Beckett had to drift from one foster family to another. He saw Julia less and less, until they eventually lost contact completely. Time passed quickly. Now Beckett has grown into an adult, working at a high-end clothing store to make a living. Beckett is still keeping a close watch on the Radford family his mother belonged to and that fortune. Unfortunately, the death rate of those heirs is frustratingly low. Not a single one of them has died even until today. Now Beckett has begun to accept a cruel reality that in this lifetime, he may never receive even a single penny. But just when Beckett was about to accept his fate, he suddenly ran into Julia at the store after so many years. Even though Beckett felt inferior and tried to pretend he did not know her, Julia took the initiative to greet him. At this moment, she looked glamorous from head to toe, with a huge diamond ring on her finger showing her status. Looking at Julia like this, Beckett felt deeply ashamed of himself, feeling that he did not belong in her world. After exchanging a few simple words, Julia suddenly asked him as if it were nothing, in the end, who will inherit the Radford family fortune? Beckett answered right away, one day, all of that money will be mine. Call me when you have killed them all. After saying that, Julia walked out of the store and went to her fiancé, laughing as she told him that Beckett worked in there. That night after returning home, Beckett opened the old pocket watch once again. Inside was that lock of his mother Mary's hair. At this moment, Beckett once again remembered what his mother told him before she died: never give up until you live the life you truly want. Right now, there are still 7 heirs ahead of him. Every one of them is living a life of wild luxury, while he alone is still squeezed into a shabby little apartment, struggling to survive day by day. Unwilling to accept this, Beckett thought for a long time and finally made up his mind: if I am going to trim a few branches from the family tree, where should I start? After thinking it over, Beckett chose his first target and set his sights on his cousin Tyler. Tyler is a complete spoiled rich kid. Relying on the fact that his father Warren is a broker at a financial services company, his family has more money than they can ever spend. He does not need to work hard or fight for anything. Every day, all he knows is throwing pool parties, spending money like water, living a carefree and comfortable life. After locking onto his target, Beckett began thinking about how to do it, but just then, the clothing store owner decided to transfer Beckett to a warehouse job in Jersey City, so his position could be given to another old employee's son. Even though Beckett argued his case, the boss still would not change his decision. Under these circumstances, Beckett could only move his murder plan forward as fast as possible, so very soon, Beckett showed up at Tyler's beach party and found his cousin alone on the yacht. Seeing this, Beckett came up with a vicious plan. In an instant, it took shape in his mind. After that, Beckett drove a jet ski and quietly boarded the yacht. At this moment, Tyler is already drunk out of his mind. He even mistakes Beckett for a waiter and arrogantly orders him to drop the anchor. Beckett does not argue and obediently brings the anchor, but then while Tyler is not paying attention, he quietly takes the other end of the rope and tightly ties it to Tyler's leg. But at this moment, Beckett, who is killing for the first time, still feels hesitation in his heart. Just as he is struggling to decide, Tyler suddenly wakes up. Beckett is startled in shock and instinctively lets go of what he is holding. Just like that, his cousin goes swimming in the sea together with the anchor, after making sure his cousin will not come back up. Beckett rides the jet ski away from the scene. After that, he even attends Tyler's funeral. Beckett comes here not to mourn Tyler and not to feel sad, but to set his sights on his next target, that is Tyler's father, Warren. Beckett takes the initiative to greet Warren and openly reveals his identity, saying he is Mary's son and Warren's nephew. Warren is surprised at first, then brings Beckett to the bar to talk. In fact, Warren has always admired his sister Mary for daring to stand up against their controlling father, something he could never do. When he learns that Beckett and his mother struggled all these years, Warren feels full of sympathy. He should have stayed in touch with his sister and been a strong support for her and his nephew. But in reality, he acted like a coward because he feared their father. Do you know who did this to him? Warren does not suspect at all that his son's death has anything to do with this seemingly honest nephew. Instead, he believes it is due to his own poor parenting. Seeing Beckett living in hardship, Warren cannot bear it and decides to help him. So he arranges for Beckett through connections to join the family's financial trading firm. Early the next morning, Beckett arrives at the trading firm for work. Even though he is only a low-level employee, Beckett still uses Warren's connection to step into the family's inner circle for the first time. Beckett knows nothing about this industry and can only start by learning the most basic trading terms, but with his sharp mind, after only 1 week, he has already learned this whole language and finally has a real job of his own. Beckett also wants to learn how to manage wealth, because maybe before long, he is going to get rich. But right at this moment, Julia, who is already married, suddenly calls him. Every word sounds like she wants Beckett to try chasing her. This phone call leaves Beckett's heart restless, so after setting aside his uncle Warren, he fixes his eyes on a new murder target. The man is named Noah and he is another one of Beckett's cousins. Noah comes from a wealthy family and has never worried about food or money. Since childhood, he has never had to struggle for a living, so he picks up a camera and dreams only of becoming an artist. Beckett first watches every video related to Noah. After learning his basic background and personality, Beckett slips into Noah's newly opened art show. He deliberately stands in front of the artwork and says things Noah would like to hear. Just as expected, he quickly catches Noah's attention. The two immediately start talking. Noah has completely lowered his guard around Beckett, even brings him to the photo developing room. Not long after, Noah's girlfriend, Ruth, comes looking for him, so Noah introduces her to Beckett. But what is surprising is Beckett and Ruth get along especially well. Both of them grew up in single-parent families, and both of them love Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. Once they start talking, the cousin instead seems like an outsider, but in the end, Beckett would never give up the inheritance that is almost within reach, so while everyone is busy during dinner, he secretly slips into his cousin's photography studio. This time, Beckett's plan is very simple, that is to add chemicals into the photographic stop solution, mixing sulfur and potassium chloride. Once combined, it is basically the same as an explosive. When the accident happens, outsiders will only think that poor Noah chose the wrong cleaning materials. To make it look like an accident, Beckett hides a can of potassium chloride under the sink. In the end, all it takes is a tiny spark to trigger the explosion. For example, Noah, who is afraid of being nagged by his girlfriend, always secretly comes to the darkroom to smoke. Although the plan seems flawless, Beckett underestimates the time needed to set the trap, and staying in the bathroom alone for too long easily makes others suspicious, so Noah quickly comes looking for him. Seeing the trap is about to be exposed, Beckett quickly thinks on his feet. He takes out the art photos he secretly took earlier and pretends he cannot help admiring the work. Noah is very happy when he sees this, thinking Beckett truly appreciates his art, so he signs the photo and gives it to him. But Noah could never imagine this would be the last work of his life. After the dinner, the guests gradually leave. Beckett originally plans to grab his coat and leave, but thinking about Ruth, who gets along so well with him, in the end, he leaves the coat behind. So Ruth runs after him to return it. The two cannot help but kiss each other. Noah, who has been betrayed, returns to the studio and triggers the explosive trap set by Beckett. This time, taking action not only brings him one step closer to the massive fortune, but also wins Ruth's affection. The two even exchange glances at the funeral. Strictly speaking, Noah and her were not married. When they were together, the cousin had already passed away, so they were not crossing any moral line. Beckett originally wanted to keep going while the moment was right, but the strange deaths of two heirs in a row had already drawn serious attention from the FBI. He was soon taken away by the police for investigation and went through a series of interrogations. Facing questions about the order of inheritance, Beckett stayed calm and composed. He even turned around and questioned the agents. If he could really inherit a billion-dollar fortune, then why would he still stay in the family company, working as just an ordinary employee, going to work 9 to 5 every day? His argument sounded reasonable. The police could not find any flaw, so the investigation had to end hastily. After that, Beckett became the only remaining third-generation member in the family, quickly became the person Warren trusted the most. With his strong performance, Beckett was promoted to department manager and even got his own private office. The once poor young man with nothing had now stepped into the middle class. Looking at the hair left by his mother, he started thinking about stopping his actions. After all, as long as he lived longer than the elders, he could still inherit the fortune in order. But in the next moment, Julia suddenly walked into his office and said, "Do you really think you got here only by your own effort?" In fact, Julia's life was not going well now. Although her husband Hall inherited his father's company, he did not inherit his father's business talent at all. In just 2 years, the company was pushed to the edge of bankruptcy by him. This time, she came to him on her own, hoping to use their past relationship to get some funds to help her get through the crisis. But Beckett knew clearly a financial company is not a charity. It only invests in projects with profit and potential. It cannot just give out money for nothing. So even facing Julia's tempting presence, he still showed no sign of giving in at all. Seeing that, Julia immediately frowned, stood up and left. "Tyler and Noah. Let me think about who the next one will be. If I were you, I might be feeling a little nervous. I will wait for your message. I believe you are going to make a huge profit." Those words instantly woke Beckett up. Everything he had now was given by the family, not something he earned by fighting for it himself. If one day the family no longer needed him, they could kick him aside at any time. Only by holding the wealth firmly in his own hands could he truly rest easy. Then Beckett immediately locked onto the next target. That was his own younger uncle. His younger uncle was a cult-like rock star. He had always had a terrible reputation in that circle. Using the name of God, he crazily gathered money, causing countless followers to lose everything and ruin their families. For Beckett, getting rid of this fake and evil man brought no burden to his heart at all. So Beckett disguised himself as a reporter from a religious magazine and successfully met his younger uncle under the name of an interview. During the interview, Beckett deliberately pointed at the photo behind him and started a conversation. While the man kept bragging without stopping, he quickly dropped a few drops of colorless, tasteless poison into the drink. But in the next second, his younger uncle suddenly picked up the samurai sword on the table and started waving it at Beckett. "I know it was you. Until you confess, you are not leaving here." It turned out his younger uncle had already seen through Beckett that he was not a real reporter at all, because the reporter he was pretending to be had already retired smoothly 8 months earlier. Beckett was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat, but at the same time, doubt rose in his heart. If his younger uncle had really seen through his purpose, then why did he not call the police directly? But looking at the man's attitude, it did not seem like a joke, so he could only admit first that he was his younger uncle's cousin. The moment his younger uncle heard he was family, he immediately put away the samurai sword. It turned out his younger uncle had made too many enemies in daily life. Many people wanted to collect evidence and expose his scandals. His younger uncle had mistaken Beckett for an enemy who came to investigate him. Then his younger uncle picked up the glass without any guard and took a sip of the spiked drink. Not long after, the drug took effect and his younger uncle died on the spot. The poison Beckett put into the glass was actually a large dose of dehydroepiandrosterone. This kind of thing is very common in the American fitness circle, but once the dose is too high, it can trigger severe heart problems. Beckett naturally attended the third family funeral. This carefully planned murder was flawless and still did not raise any suspicion from the police. But when he returned home, Beckett suddenly found Julia had appeared inside his apartment. It turned out because Beckett never contacted her, so Julia came to him on her own. "We have no money left at all. My husband has lied to me for years. He is a complete coward." As Julia spoke, she moved closer to Beckett, trying to rekindle their past relationship and rely on him to escape her situation. But facing this woman he once loved deeply, Beckett did not waver at all and firmly rejected her. Then he immediately went out to have dinner with Ruth. At this moment, Beckett already had a very decent job and a newly budding relationship. He could have chosen to pause and stop the systematic killing of his whole family, but because of his previous successful kills, Beckett could no longer stop himself. After that, Beckett turned his hand toward his aunt. He disguised himself as a spa worker and warmly recommended to his aunt a brand new teeth whitening treatment. His aunt did not hesitate and agreed right away. But she never imagined until her death that Beckett had added hydrogen peroxide carbamate into it. It could not only kill a person, but was also very similar to the acidic ingredients in whitening products, so even if the police investigated later, they would only think that his aunt bought a low-quality whitening product while adopting a child in Cambodia, just like that. Beckett claimed another kill. After that, Beckett set his sights on his uncle. The man was a passionate flying enthusiast, spending all day obsessed with planes and going to space, so Beckett disguised himself as an airport ground worker and handed his uncle a cup of spiked coffee. His uncle fell into an endless sleep on the plane. Beckett returned to real life. Both love and career were going smoothly for him. In just one short year, Beckett completely turned his life around. He not only bought a luxury apartment, but also moved forward smoothly with his wedding to Ruth. But what troubled Beckett the most right now was Warren, who had once helped promote him, because Warren had always treated him well. Beckett truly could not bring himself to harm this kind old man. There was also another very important reason, that was because Beckett was already satisfied with his current life. He was no longer desperately chasing that fortune. After all, Warren was already very old. Sooner or later, he would pass before Beckett. He only needed to wait patiently. Later, the police found out Beckett was one of the heirs, so they came to question him again to see whether they could find any weakness. But every time he made a move, Beckett had prepared an alibi for himself, so the police came back empty-handed once again. But on the way home from work one day, Warren suddenly turned pale and clutched his chest in pain. Then not long after, he collapsed straight to the ground. Beckett quickly told someone to call an ambulance. Later at the hospital, Warren forced himself to say a few words to Beckett. He actually knew what Beckett wanted. Maybe he could even guess what Beckett had done. Go find the one person in your life and love them with all your heart, because in the end, this is the only thing that truly gives something back. After saying these words, Warren left this world forever. Now there was only one heir left, his grandfather. As long as his grandfather also died, then the fortune worth $20 billion would completely fall into his hands. But not long after, Beckett received a letter. His grandfather actually wanted to meet him in person, but that same night was Beckett and Ruth's engagement party. Even though the engagement party was important, the billion-dollar inheritance was even more important. Right after Beckett hung up the phone, he saw Julia in the office. She had brought an envelope with her. Beckett opened it and looked. Instantly felt frozen to the bone. Julia had hired a private detective to secretly investigate everything he did and photographed all of his schemes. It turned out Julia knew Tyler was an excellent swimmer, so there was no way he could have drowned so easily, and because of that, Julia began to suspect Tyler's death and then traced it back to Beckett. Julia told him before 5 in the afternoon, under the name of the finance company, to write a down payment check worth $300,000 and send it to her husband's office. If Beckett could not do it, then the photos recording all his crimes would be sent straight to the police email right away. Left with no choice, Beckett could only force himself to do it. Even though doing this was already the crime of embezzlement, as long as he could get the billion-dollar inheritance, these troubles could naturally be dealt with easily. But Beckett did not notice that a police officer had been following him the whole time. Beckett arrived at Hall's office. Hall stepped forward and cursed at Beckett, saying he was just a bastard from Newark and did not deserve everything he had now. Beckett got so angry that he slapped him directly. That night, Beckett drove through the heavy rain to his grandfather's estate. He planned to solve everything in 30 minutes, then go back to attend the engagement party, under the butler's guidance. Beckett finally stepped into the place that once shut him out. Maybe it would not be long before this place even became his home, but the moment Beckett walked inside, the butler directly shut the door. Right after that, his grandfather appeared at the end of the hallway, staring at him with cold eyes. After the two finished a tense dinner, his grandfather brought him to the collection room and took out a hunting rifle he had kept for many years. His grandfather told Beckett this gun originally belonged to his father. During World War I, his father used this gun to kill many enemies. It was the pride of the family. His grandfather skillfully loaded the rifle, then handed it to Beckett and pointed at his own chest, telling Beckett to shoot right here. Beckett was stunned in an instant. His grandfather had already guessed that the series of deaths in the family were all connected to him, although Beckett really wanted to kill the source of all his pain. After hesitating, he still held himself back. Beckett was afraid that if he pulled the trigger, he would fall into his grandfather's trap, so after giving a few vague replies, he quickly turned around to leave, but the door had already been locked by the butler. Beckett hurried to the next room, trying to find another way out, but that room was also completely locked. At that moment, Beckett noticed a shadow outside the door. Beckett barely avoided the gunshot, then quickly ran out trying to survive, but his grandfather shouted at him from behind. The house had already been prepared in advance. There was no escape left at all. You came to my house to kill me. You should have done it when I gave you the chance just now. Beckett quickly found a bow to protect himself. Using the archery skills his mother had taught him, he shot several arrows and killed his own grandfather. The estate was covered with surveillance cameras, recording his grandfather's deadly chase from start to finish, so Beckett was acting completely in self-defense, but because of this, he still missed his engagement party with Ruth. At this moment, Beckett had no idea that he had missed his chance to return to a normal life. On the day Beckett was holding his wedding, the police suddenly stopped him in front and seriously announced that Beckett was under arrest. The charge was murder, but the victim was not any family member, it was Julia's husband, Hall. The police told Beckett Hall died in his own office. The security footage from that day showed that only Beckett had entered Hall's office. On the letter opener that killed Hall, Beckett's fingerprints were also found, so whether it was the time of death or the motive, Beckett was under serious suspicion. Later in court, Julia broke down in tears and accused Beckett in front of the jury, pushing all the blame onto him. Only then did Beckett realize that he had been played by this woman from beginning to end. In the end, the jury made its decision, finding the defendant Beckett guilty of first-degree murder and sentencing him to death. In only a few short minutes, Beckett went from a billionaire to a dead man. In the days that followed, he fell completely into despair, counting the days as he waited for the execution. But when there were only 24 hours left before the execution, Julia suddenly came to visit Beckett. As expected, Julia's goal had been that huge fortune from the very beginning. When I found Hall, I actually found something else too. What exactly can you offer in exchange? To get the will Hall left behind and prove his own innocence. Beckett had no choice but to accept Julia's condition and transfer all his property to her. Soon after returning to prison, Beckett received a thick stack of transfer papers. Holding down the bitterness in his heart, he signed stroke by stroke, wrote his name on the agreement. Finally, when there were less than 10 hours left before the execution, the court received the will evidence submitted by Julia. Beckett was declared not guilty and released. The moment he walked out of prison, he felt as if a whole lifetime had passed. Ruth had already been waiting outside the prison for a long time, but right after that, Ruth returned that pocket watch to Beckett, then drove away without looking back. Beckett stood there stunned with nothing but loss in his heart, but in the next second, he saw Julia not far away. She was also there to pick him up. In the end, Beckett still pulled open the car door and sat in the Rolls-Royce. Then the two of them returned together to that grand estate. This is where the story truly comes to an end. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next one.